Welcome back to the Rogues Gallery. This is Phantom Rose, a card game RPG roguelite. We're going to be playing on standard difficulty, which is already hard enough. And we get to choose an item for our run. More items are unlocked as you get more XP and play the game. I'm a big fan of the default item, the apple, which gives you 50% chance to recover 3 HP at the start of the phase. It's pretty good. So in Phantom Rose, you play as a maid whose master's mansion is turned into a dungeon, and you have to go to the bottom and find her. So we start out on our grid here. We can move to the right and down. We cannot move up, we cannot move to the left. And in front of us are 2 fights. So let's pick one. So this game is a lot like Slay the Spire. You draw cards into your hand. There are some interesting rules with this game, though. So first of all, this is our hand down here. And some of those cards have been automatically played to the field. Now, things on the field are things that are going to happen. When I hit this button to go, all these cards will be played, including the enemy cards. And most importantly thing to note is that all of these cards, my cards in particular, go away. They're removed from my deck entirely. They are not reshuffled in. The ones in the hand are, but not the ones on the field. So if I don't want to use these dual strike cards, which are very rare and pretty good cards, I can swap them out with things in my hand, like shields. But I don't have anything to hit him with, which is a problem. So another thing I can do is, if I don't have the cards I need, I can swap cards that are in my deck. You can redraw up to 3. 3 strikes are what I need. I want a strike to do an attack, and drop this in. One important thing to note, the 3 basic card types, shield, strike, and heal, all return to your deck. Any other special card will not. It will be destroyed upon hitting the button. The barrier acts as you might expect. It soaks damage. You can see our damage meter over here on the left. It's a 5, and our current barrier is a 6. Now, when I redraw cards, I use Phantom Rose points, which you can see down here. So as long as I have points, theoretically, I could search my deck until I have the exact cards I want, which is really good for synergies, as long as you bear in mind you can only do those synergies once with those cards, and then they're gone. So it looks like we're getting hit. I'm going to block a hit, and then I think I want to do 2 strikes. One bit of advice is always save your special cards for bosses unless you run into a particularly difficult enemy. But this guy is a level 1 slime, literally the weakest enemy in the game, so I don't want to waste anything special on him. So it looks like one more ought to do it. Now, important thing to note, if the combat ends, these 2 cards will not be played, so they go back to my deck. I did bad math, but close enough. So when you win, you get both Phantom Rose points, and you get to pick new cards. I'm going to go with Vampiric Fangs, which is the main way to heal in this game. And Assassinate, which I'm not too hot on. We'll talk about why it's not that great, but in certain circumstances it's okay. So it looks like we got a new node type down here. This is Mystery Event. These events usually pay a certain amount of roses and you get a small benefit. Like, I believe that she will heal me. She did. I got 5 HP. Didn't really need it. So let's keep going. There are 4 main kinds of events. There's the mystery event, a treasure, a shop, and an enemy encounter. And technically a 5th in the healing camps, which we will get to later. So once again, I'm going to switch out the dual strike. Going to block. Another important mechanic is once you swap something out, you can't swap it back from the field, but if it's in your hand, you can unlock it to swap it back into the field. So the enemy has played a Bloodlust card, which gives them the Bloodlust buff, which means if they do damage to me, they inflict bleeding. And bleeding will do a set amount of damage depending on how many of the debuffs you have stacked on you. So let's go with this Assassinate. It should be enough. Assassinate does 2 damage, and the attack value is the number of strikes on the field. So there were 4 strikes on the field. I did 4 damage twice. Another card you almost always want to have in your deck is Pierce. It will deal double damage if opponent has Barrier. Barrier 5 is not a great card. It's basically just a shield card. But it's worth it to grab Pierce. So now we got a search node. We select a random point and we could get a random thing. A random treasure, item, or encounter. It looks like we got an item this time. So it gives us a buff at the start of phase 4. I usually in this game recommend avoiding most enemy encounters. That's not too bad. So when you hit a camp, you automatically recover 30 HP, and you get a chance to mess around with your deck. So we can dissolve spell cards we don't need. This is mostly deck curation, so we're not pulling a bunch of bad cards. For instance, I'm going to get rid of all these barriers. I'll get a few Phantom Roses for them, and I just don't need them. But everything else looks fine. I could also copy cards if I want. I have nothing that I really want to copy now. Cards come in different levels. So for instance, notice Dual Strike over on the right. It's a level 4 card. It is very good and very expensive to copy. The number on the left is how many of them we have in our deck currently. There's not much I want to do here though. There's a shop, so let's check that out. So Rage is a good status effect. If you get attacked, it will buff your attack power. I also want to grab one of the Chrysalis, which gives you Barrier at the end of the round. It is another stat buff. This game is made up primarily about buffs, debuffs, and various stats. Raw attack power is occasionally very good, but you're going to have to learn what all these stats mean if you want to play. I'm going to grab this attack up as well. But I really don't want to spend a lot. As I said, the most important mechanic is the Soul Rose, which lets you redraw cards. So if you spend all that at the store or duplicating cards, when you get into actual combat, you're not going to be able to draw the stuff you need. So I would recommend having Soul Rose of 30 to 40, really, and even higher would be better. You don't want to spend it. Unless it's to save good cards. So this lady's going to play a 0 Evade, which will give her Thorn Armor, which will damage me if I hurt her. And it will automatically evade my first attack. So I am going to strike her before she plays it, and then build up my barrier in the meantime to wait it out. One unfortunate thing about this system is it encourages you to save your good cards, so normal battles, they're going well, are kind of boring, as most of the time you spend doing generic strikes, generic shields, and not much else if you can get away with it, because that's really the best, most optimal way to play that I've found. Boss fights are a little more interesting, and then some enemy types require certain strategies specifically. But for the most part, you'll just kind of be digging through your deck, picking out the generic cards, throwing them in, and saving your good stuff. I do like this game, though. I've sort of come around to it. I thought the fact that your cards are spent originally would make it very hard to pull off synergies, but as long as you have Phantom Rose points, you can, and a little bit of luck, you can really draw whatever you need at any time. Also interesting thing to note, this game was made by one person. The artist and programmer, I think he did the music as well. Music is not a lot to write home about. I'm gonna have this piano refrain stuck in my head forever, basically. But it's still not bad. Especially for a one-person team. One thing I forgot to point out, this enemy has the growth status effect permanently applied, which means that every round her attack goes up. So I think she started at like 5 attack and now she's at 8. Would be a cause for concern if I wasn't going to kill her right now. So of these, Fear Strike is not too bad. Encore is not a great card, but I will take it for Fear Strike. Fear Strike causes fear, which deals damage in debuffs, deals damage equal to the number of buffs that your character has. And you can start setting up some pretty long buffs and some pretty good damage over time with that. Also, this book, its sin stinks to high heaven. So we're gonna block for a little bit, as it's got a lot of damage. It's putting a lot of damage downwind. What just happened there is I activated my hammer item. Whenever I redraw 6 cards, I get more defense. Defense is the amount of barrier you get when you block or shield. So now if I use a shield card, I should get 6. I'm thinking, though, I could use a little more health. So I'm going to play Vampiric Fangs, which gives me the buff that will mean that when I deal damage to an opponent, I recover 2 HP. 3, actually. So this combined with something like Dual Strike or Assassinate, because I attack twice, that means technically I get 6 HP. And this buff will last for this round and next round. So Assassin Strike doesn't do a lot of damage usually, but because it hits twice, it's good for triggering buffs that require you to hit. Looks like no attacks coming my way, so I might as well just milk this vampiric ability for all I got. And now I'm back at full health once again. Or I would be if he didn't block. Looks like I might have been wrong about that defense thing. I'll have to look at the tapes. So I don't want to waste these Pierce cards because his shield is going to be gone by the time that I finish striking. And that should take care of this combat. None of these are great. They don't really work with what I have going on right now. I can't make people bleed. Whisper is, I don't think, a very good card in general. Reduces duration of buffs when attacked. This game is really all about damage. It's also actively being supported by the dev. There was a patch that dropped like within 2 days of me playing it that reworked things to make some cards better, gave a bit more defensive options, but you're really all about offense. Also, this is another special node, Maid Rescue. You fight a powerful enemy, and you get an item and healing after. I don't think I've ever seen this enemy before. So he has the Chrysalis buff, which means he gets 6 berry at end of phase, no matter what. And he doubles his attack at the start of phase if his HP is less than half. Alright, so I'm going to actually spend some of my good cards here, as this is a tough enemy. If I actually have any, which it doesn't look like I do. So I lied, we're gonna start off a little slow. He also applied growth to himself, which means his attack will raise at the end of every turn. And he's going to play Focus, which means he will ignore my barrier. So I, in turn, I'm going to start using Fear. So I want to put as many positive status effects on myself as I can. I gave myself Illusion, which inflicts fear upon enemies who attack you. And because I have 6 points worth of buffs, at the end of the round he's going to take 6 points of damage. Fear can get pretty ridiculous and is a very good way of dealing damage if you have buff cards. I don't have a lot, unfortunately. Actually, I should have used the Assassin Strike so I could take advantage of the Vampiric Fangs. Alright, this guy is buffing his attack like crazy, so he's about to get dangerous. I also gave him bleeding. Bleeding, you take the amount of bleeding damage you have on your debuff times 2. It is also another debuff that can get pretty crazy if you get it really going. Also, if I get hit now, I'll be able to take 1 hit from him, but his attack is 14, so I really need to kill this guy as soon as possible. And this should do it. First of all, you get a big Soul Rose bonus. You get more cards than usual. None of these, which I'm a big fan of. I'm going to grab these. And an item. And some HP back. That's not a great item. It lets you fracture opponent's barrier. That's not usually a big problem. I don't know, I've never found the card to be too useful. So we're gonna build more shield. And I could heal. The healing cards are not very useful, I've found. 3 HP is not a lot, and you could really be doing better things with your time. Vampiric Fangs is really the way you want to heal, if you have to. You also might notice I'm holding on to these dual attack cards for my dear life. I really only want to use those for bosses. There's some bosses later in the game that are time sensitive. Either their attack becomes so huge or they just automatically win at the end of a certain number of rounds. So being able to deal big damage is necessary, and those cards are very good at that. I have a lot of Vampiric Fangs, so I'm not too afraid of wasting those though. And of course, strikes go back to the deck automatically, so not a big deal to use those. She's getting up there in attack, though. So my other item kicked in at phase 4. I now will deal bleeding if I hit. So I can use my Incision card. No, nice. It does 2 times damage if target is bleeding. So my first attack's going to make her bleed. My second will deal double damage, and then regular old strike in there. Cards that cause bleeding plus Incision is one of the major important combos in this game. One of the builds, if you will. The 2 big builds are Fear Focus and Bleed Focus. And then I guess the third one would be Buff Attack. So we got a card that will cause bleeding to everyone, which is alright. But Fever Pierce is, I think, what I'm about. Because with this card, I can run a pretty nasty combo. Alright, it's time to fight a boss. So I could rest first, recover, curate my deck a bit, or I could just get into it. If you do an ambush, you will deal 15 damage at the start of the round. And we got the harder of the 2 bosses you could fight here. So she will buff herself, buff her attack, if her HP is higher than mine. And at the end of 4 rounds, she gains 10 HP. But right now, I would like... Actually, I'm just going to do damage for now, I think. We'll start a little slow. A little slow play. Alright, so I get 3 turns in a row. I didn't mention this, but if you look down at the bottom, you can see how the turns are going to go. But now is a great time to show off that combo I was talking about. So earlier I picked up a card called Venom. Venom deals 3 damage to an enemy at the end of their turn. It's not great in that regard, but it lasts for 5 rounds. So what I'm gonna do and this is sad because most of my Venom cards will be gone, so it'll be gone from my deck completely. But you combine these guys with Fever Pierce, which deals your attack plus the sum of the opponent's debuffs. So I'm putting 10 debuffs on him right now. Which means whopping 15 damage. Not a bad combo if I say so myself. Now let me check my deck real quick and see if I have another Fever Pierce somewhere in here. It looks like that was my only one, unfortunately. So let me go back to regular old attacks. I'm not worried about losing health right now and blocking. When you beat a boss, your HP is restored to full. So I think I'm just going to go all in. Also notice my heal kicked in. It probably has been for a while, I just never noticed it. But in terms of bang for your buck run items, the apple, which gives you 3 HP at the start of every phase, 50% chance, it really pays the dividends. But with that, that's going to be the first boss down. This video is getting pretty long, so I think I'm going to call it there. I will try to do probably 2 more videos with the rest of the run. But that's Phantom Rose. It's actually kind of good. I like it. Not as much replay value, I would say, as something like Slay the Spire. But for something made by one guy, not too bad. As for cards I'm going to pick up, Unguard is an extremely good card because it lets you block and gives you plus attack. And on this side, there's nothing that great. So we're going to take this one. We also get an item. I'm going to go with the Crystal Bracelet. That's 5 barrier at the start of battle. And we can do a little deck curation. They force you to curate your deck if you have over 60 cards. Let's see if there's anything I want more of. I could always use more on guards, but those are ungodly expensive to make. I don't have any big combo cards right now, so I'll just have to survive until I get some. And there's nothing I want out of my deck particularly. So, actually, a little more attack up. And lastly, we get to select a upgrade. I like increasing my attack. That's Phantom Rose, and I will see you next time.